Bricks released version 2.1 in beta format today. And if you want to test this out for yourself, you can do. You can log into your dashboard on Bricks, download this and test it out. But please do not use this on a live site. It is a beta and therefore will probably have breaking changes, bugs and issues. If you want to test it out, by all means do, but only on a test environment. Now, 2.1 brings with it a lot of big changes, some key new features and expansion to some existing features. And I'm going to go through some of the key things inside the changelog, give you some examples, show you how some of these things works, but I am going to go through in some of what I would consider to be the more important changes in their own dedicated videos. And I'll release those over the next couple of days. So let's start off with Bricks components. Now, I covered Bricks components in a video last week, and one of the topics that came up in the conversation was we really need to have components accessible inside core WordPress so we can use these inside Gutenberg as normal blocks. Well, 2.1 brings that functionality. Let's take a quick look at how you enable this, and then we'll take a look at how you can actually use it. So to make this available, you're going to need to come into your settings in Bricks. Under the general tab, you've got the block editor. We've got this new experimental option, and this is experimental, and I expect this probably will be experimental when 2.1 is released. But you've got three options inside here. Disabled, which is the default, so can't access this. There's nothing going to be showing up inside Gutenberg. Or you can enable individual components manually, or you can have all components automatically enabled. If you do all automatically, everything will be available inside the front end, inside Gutenberg. So you can access them and everybody can get access to them. You may not want that, so you may want to choose the manual option where you can pick and choose what isn't available. We're going to use that because I'll show you the option as part of this. And all you need to do then is come down and make sure you hit Save Changes, and you are good to go. So now we come into a post where I'm using Gutenberg. You see Bricks is not available to me inside here. I don't have it enabled. We can come over to the plus and scroll down, and you'll see inside there we've got Bricks components. Now I've got one showing at the moment because I've got the others turned off. So I'll show you how you can enable and disable things in a moment. So all you're going to do is click to add this in. Now I've already created some components, and if you don't know how to do that, check out this video, link down below as well. But I will be covering this when I take a look at this in more detail in its own dedicated video in the next day or two. Okay, so let's add a staff card in. And you can see over on the right hand side, we have the properties for this particular component. There are only two in this instance, but you could obviously have a lot more, and different types of components will warrant different types of properties. So for example, now if we add the name in, you'll see that updates. And if we select an image, that gets added in. Hit save, and now if you want to, you can add another component in, and you can lay these out however you want to inside Gutenberg. So we've easily added a component in. Like I say, I'm going to go through this in more detail with a better example in its own video, but you can see how easy it is. So now we've seen how to add them in. How do we control what is and isn't going to be displayed inside here? Well, let's come back out. Open up any page in Bricks and hop over into the component section. You can see we have three components. We've got the staff card, which you can see is enabled in the block editor, denoted by this little purple W, and you'll see the other two don't. If you go to the top, we can choose to see exactly what is enabled. Click again to show everything. So let's say we want to make this heading wrapper available inside Gutenberg. Just choose the option from here and say, yes, we're sure. You can see that's now enabled. We'll hit save. Now come back into our same page, click our plus, and you'll see now we've got our heading wrapper, which I can click to add that in. You can see we've got two options here for the properties. I can fill what I want in there, and obviously then I've got control over positioning and so on. So I can easily reposition this at the top, and you can see we can start to build things out. So it's very easy to use inside here. It's pretty simple, straightforward, and intuitive. But just bear in mind, whatever you set up inside your component, whatever classes, design things and things like that, when you look at this on the live site, that's exactly what you see. And again, I will cover that in more detail in its own dedicated video and show you the difference between the editor inside Gutenberg and the final end result. But that's how we can work with components now inside Gutenberg editor. Next on the agenda is something that a lot of people have been asking for a very long time, and one of those kind of weak spots in Bricks, and that is starting templates. Now, it's okay to have templates that are designed and full designs and template sets, but you kind of do a lot of remedial work. Wireframes, in my opinion, are a better starting point. And now with 2.1, there's going to be an awful lot of new wireframes, and hopefully they will still expand upon this. So let's take a look at how you access these and some of the options available. So back in the Bricks editor, come up to the templates option. And you'll see we've got the source and we now have wireframes inside here. So if we choose this, give it a second or so, and that will then load everything in. And you can see we now have a ton of templates. Now these are organized in a nice simple fashion. So you can see we've got template bundles, so 404s, avatars, and so on. So some of these are smaller component pieces. Other ones are sort of main sections inside a design. So you can see from here, we've got 404 pages, avatars, for example. So you can see we've got the ability to organize things. Then we've got template tags. So things like if you want to use CSS grid, for example, grids inside here. And you can stack these on top of each other. So if you want pop-ups and so on, there's options available. This isn't massively expansive, but if you want a quick starting point and you don't have any libraries like Brixies and things like that, this may be a good starting point for you. Especially if you're new to working with bricks and you don't want to spend any more money, you just want to find out how to get up and running. Maybe take a look at these to see how they work and so on. It's a good starting point. Then you've got your template types. So your headers, your footers, and so on. So when you create a template inside bricks, they fall into one of these categories. Well, we can easily come in and say, we want to look at the headers we can use as a header template, and then they're shown inside here. For this example, let's come back out of this and just clear this out. And if you want to search, you can search inside here as well. So you may want to do hero. You can see we can type in hero and it'll show us all the hero sections. So let's say we like the look of this one. We can preview this if we want to, or we can just insert it. So that's going to then ask you a couple of different questions. First thing is it needs to install some variables into your site structure. As you can see, there's a bunch of different variables inside here, and these are going to cater for this template and probably for several other templates, if not everything. So you are probably best advised to say yes to this, because if you choose no, then the wireframe is not going to look the way you expect it to. We'll come back onto this in a moment. Hit yes. It says then, do you want to use this theme style? So you can see it's got our BRX wireframe theme style. Again, you're probably going to want to say yes, because this is going to configure the various different variables and values and so on to make sure that the wireframe looks the way it's intended to. We'll hit yes on there, and then you'll also ask you at the end of it to install a color palette. I've already gone through this a couple of times. It's just a neutral color palette, which again, you can choose to use or say no. It's entirely up to you how you want to work. So we now have our wireframe set up. So you can see everything is laid out. It's blank placeholders. Everything is there. So now if we come over and take a look at our variables and classes, you can see we've got 11 classes set up inside here. Coming to our variables, there's all the variables that we imported. So everything is set up here, including those color options, which, like I say, I've already installed them previously, but that's just one extra step. And if we come in and take a look, for example, at our theme styles, you'll see this is using the BRX wireframes. And you can see the typography is set inside here, and also the elements have some various different variables and things set up. So, for example, your section, your container, they're all set up inside here. Which kind of leads me on to going back to what I was saying about when we installed the variables. If you are using something like Brixies or Brixmaven or any other kind of wireframe setup, you may not want to also mix and match using these, because you're going to then end up with a lot of additional classes and variables. One's going to be from your other wireframe set. This one is going to be from Bricks. Could lead to a bit of confusion, or ultimately just way too many variables and styles that are not actually required for the end result. So just bear that in mind. Pick one or the other would be my kind of suggestion here. But it's nice to see that we have all these available to us, and if you want to use them inside your templates, you absolutely can do. So if we come into Bricks and our templates, come in and say we'll add a new template, we'll name it header, select our template type as header, hit publish, edit with Bricks, choose our templates, break these down by template type to header. You can see we've got a bunch of header options inside here. We'll say we'll use this one, insert it. We now have everything set up. And all we need to do is come over to our manage option, come into our template settings, header, top, that's fine. Any conditions you want to set up. So we say you want to set this on the entire website, for example, and you get the idea. Works exactly the same as a normal template. And now we can customize styling and all those kinds of good things. So it's a great starting point. Means we don't have to worry about relying upon either creating everything from scratch, creating our own wireframe setups, or using a third party if we don't want to. Then we've got global queries and the query manager. I'm not going to go into too much detail about this. I would recommend taking a look at the video because, well, if you come from a using advanced themer, this is going to be very familiar to you. This allows you to easily create global queries using the normal query loop, and then you can save those and use them again if you want to. It's just a kind of nice way of managing those options. Nothing particularly groundbreaking, but a nice little time saver if you're not an advanced themer user and you want to reuse the same queries in various different parts of your site, different templates, different pages, and so on. This can ultimately save you a lot of time, and you can easily make changes to any of those queries and affect everywhere. Consider them like a query template. Another option that I think is better to take a look at Thomas's video, and that's the query data from APIs. So if you've ever used BricsForge and the feature they have there for connecting up to various different external APIs and pulling in information into your WordPress website, maybe from another WordPress website or a service like a weather service or something like that that uses an API to allow you to connect and pull data in, you'll be able to do that natively inside Bricks from 2.1. Again, this is one of those features that's probably a little bit more advanced for a lot of users. So check out the video that Thomas has done, and if there's enough interest as this is released, I'll take a little look at it and so we can see some examples of how it all works. But I think Thomas covers it quite nicely in this video. Now, of much more interest to me is the create and update posts via front-end forms. You'll know that I've covered this an awful lot with various different tools. I even have a course out on how to use and create your own front-end dashboard for a real estate website. So having this native inside Bricks is very, very nice to have. There is one caveat to this, and I'll come on to that as we go through. And I will, like I say, cover this in its own dedicated video in a lot more detail. We will take a look at how it all works, how to set it up and everything. But let me just show you a quick demonstration and you can see how the basics of it work. So if we take a look at my test page, you can see I've got a form inserted in here. This form has a post title. We've got the content editor, featured image, taxonomy selection. We've got tag selection. And we've got a custom ACF field because you can tie this into advanced custom fields and meta fields. Other ones are supported but not natively integrated into Bricks right now. Maybe that'll come in the future. I don't know. But ACF and meta box are the ones that are kind of primarily connected up and integrated into everything right now. So it's a normal form, but we have a couple of new form fields and we have a couple of new form actions. Let's take a quick look at the form fields, the new ones. So for example, if we come into featured image, we now have an image media library option that allows us to upload images and choose the media library as part of Bricks to select images, which leads me on to one of my first issues here. If you've taken a look at a lot of other tools that allow you to do this, like WS Forms and so on, when you choose, for example, the featured image, it only allows you to upload an image. It doesn't allow you to select them from the media library in general. I would much prefer to see the option here to enable or disable that function. So if you only want to allow people to upload and it's kind of stored alongside the post and not available inside the media library, I think that's much better, because if you give front-end access and they can access any image inside the media library, I can see that being a bit of a concern. I may have misheard what's going on here. I may have sort of like have a slight wrong take on it. If I am, please do let me know in the comment section down below. But that's one of the kind of key things I think would be nice to have here. The other thing, which I haven't tested, but I can't see any option for it right now, is to support the gallery field to allow us to upload multiple images or select multiple images for a gallery and apply those inside here. I'll have to test that a little bit more, and I'll test that before I create the more dedicated video and come back and let you know if that is an option, and it's just something I haven't seen right now. You also see we've got things like categories, tags, and ACF fields. So you've got a couple of different field types inside here that we can access. Now, if we come out of the field section and we come into our actions, you'll see we've got create post, and if we expand this, we also have the option to update post. There is a little bit of a limitation with the update post, which again, I may have got wrong. I've contacted Thomas, and so hopefully he'll come back to me before I create my dedicated video about how this works, and I'll talk about that in a moment. So the create post, that opens up a new option. As you can see, the first thing we've got is the post type. What post type do we want to update? So we can choose native functions inside here, so posts and pages and so on. And if you create custom post types using ACF or Metabox, they'll be listed here as well. Again, we'll take a look at this in its own video. Then you've got your error message and so on. But then you've got the field mapping, which is pretty simple and straightforward. There's a specific thing I want to draw your attention to very, very briefly, and we'll look at that, like I say, in more detail later. So you just map things out. So you can see, if we take a look at the top, it's always worthwhile naming your fields correctly. So post title, post content, featured image, category, tags, and so on. So then when we come down to the action, and the create post action, I can just easily marry those up. So we're just basically mapping one to the other. Pretty simple and straightforward. Then you've got your post meta, and this is what allows you to connect it up to ACF, MetaBox, and so on. So if we open this up, so you've got 3 pieces of info inside here: your meta key, your meta value, and your sanitization method. Your meta key is the meta key field for that specific ACF or MetaBox field. In this example, it's my sample field, and you can use the dynamic data option here to simply come down to ACF, and inside there you can see there's my sample field. Simple as that. Your meta value is basically where you're going to grab that value from. We just connect that up to the form element, so the form field. So again, we come back up to our fields. You can see there's my ACF field. Come down to our create post action, and we open this up, ACF field. You're just mapping the two together. Sanitization method: if you are not using MetaBox or ACF, who use their own sanitization options, you can easily choose your own sanitization options from here if you're using a different tool other than MetaBox or ACF. And you can keep on adding as many things inside here as you want. I've only got a single field to test things out. Then you've got your taxonomies, and this is something that's important to understand here. If we go back up to our fields and we open up, for example, our category, which is using the categories taxonomy, you will see that all I've got set in here is the type of select. Obviously you can have radio and so on. The label, which I put in myself, the please select, which is the placeholder you see there, but I've done nothing about mapping in values or using the options underneath. Even though you can reference dynamic data, you don't do it that way. You leave those completely blank, and what you do then is you come down to your create post action, and inside there we'll open up the categories for taxonomy, and you can see there's our categories post, which we just simply selected from here. And the field is basically just mapping it back to the form field. The same thing goes for the tags. So that's all we've done, and that will then pull in the relevant data and allow us to select those options from the list. So once we hit save draft and we take a look at this, you can see now we can add in our own custom post, featured image, and so on. And you see this opens up and shows us all of the media library. Now, there is some checks available on here that's automatically done in the background, which I would recommend you take a look at the documentation, the changelog, to see how that's implemented. And I'll cover that in a little bit more detail in its own video. But you can see how easy this all is. Then we've got the option to update posts. So basically all the same fields are inside here. All that is exactly the same. The only difference is the action is set to update post. All the mapping options are basically exactly the same inside here, and then that will allow you to update the content of your post. Now for me, I'm really happy to see these options added into the native forms in Bricks. It means we don't have to rely upon a third-party form plugin to be able to create front-end dashboards. There's still room for improvement here, and as I test it, and hopefully as we get to the point of a final release, some of these things will be addressed, and hopefully Thomas will come back to me with some info on my questions. If they do, I'll update those in the next video. There's one other thing I want to draw your attention to, which I think is really, really useful. If we expand the update post option and we come down to the post status, by default it's set to current when you want to update, so it'll just basically keep whatever post status you've set up. So if it's in draft, it'll stay in draft. But we also have the option for bin. So I need to look at this in a little bit more detail, but I'm hopeful of the fact that we'll be able to handle this, where we can actually delete this and it'll put it into the bin, not delete it immediately, put it in the bin, and then 30 days afterwards it'll be deleted, which gives us the flexibility to have the ability to add posts, edit posts, and delete posts. The 3 key things you're going to need to do when you want to create some kind of front-end dashboard. So I'll dig in a little bit more into these different options, and I'm sure as we get closer to final release, and as final release comes out, this will become a fully featured, great way of being able to handle front-end form submissions. A couple of other things that I think are worth noting, and I still need to test some of these out, but one of the ones is a fluid typography generator. So we're digging into that in a little bit more detail. We've got some new elements for the map. We've got user activation, which I think is something that's been a good addition. And again, I'll be digging into this in a little bit more detail, and we'll take a look at creating dedicated login and registration pages and so on. But one of the kind of issues we had with the existing way of working is you could create a user, but that could be easily spammed, and lots of user sort of registrations that are just junk. User activation is going to send an email out that has to be confirmed before that account is created, and you can choose to automatically log them into whatever you want to set them up to, the dashboard or whatever. So again, I'll be digging into that in a little bit more detail and maybe creating a video on how to do that. So if you'd like me to cover that and show you how to use Bricks to create your login, your registration, all those kinds of things, let me know in the comment section down below. Then you've got your tabs elements. Now I couldn't find out how to actually get this to work, But if you've ever used Bricks extras, you'll know their tabs element is very, very useful, because what it does is it'll stay at tabs until a certain breakpoint, and then it'll collapse down to an accordion automatically. That is super useful because tabs on a smaller device like a phone kind of suck. So the ability to have that natively supported inside Bricks, that the tabs will automatically swap over into accordions when you set a breakpoint, that is pretty cool. I just need to find out how the hell to find the options for that. If you know, let me know down below. And then there's the full changelog with any improvements and so on. And there's an awful lot of different things that have happened here. So Bricks 2.1 is a massive update. There's lots of new features, lots of enhancements, lots of fixes, lots of improvements, and so on. Check out the changelog. It'll be linked down below, and take a look at that. Watch the videos on here. Watch my videos when I release them. Give me your thoughts and your feedback. Are you excited for any of these? Have you been waiting for any of these? Is this going to mean that certain plugins you are currently using, you're not going to have to use anymore? Let me know in the comment section, because I really do value your feedback. And as always, all applicable links are in the description down below. My name is Paul C. This is WPTuts. So until next time, take care.